Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Convery, your go-to podcast for authentic conversations that inspire and inform your career journey. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Brendan Gignac to the show. Brendan is a builder of AI-driven software solutions, the founder of Genie Digital Solutions, and a Master of Applied Computing student at the University of Windsor. From machine learning to entrepreneurship, Brendan's combined his technical chops with business savviness to create real-world impact. Brendan's journey from high school to university and now into the world of startups and advanced computing makes him a perfect guest for those of you who are navigating your own transitions, whether from high school to college or from the classroom to your first job. So, Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Super pumped to do this with you. So, let's start with a few rapid fire questions. What do you think is your superpower?
What's my super? This was a hard question. I had to reflect on it because it's almost hard to talk about yourself in that vein. So I got a few, funny answers from people around me. I tried to, reach out to people I trust, and get their take. So there's some funny ones, but when I kind of dug into it, I would say that my superpower is pattern weaving. That's what I came up with. So I'm kind of more of like a
Ah,
knowledge archetype of person and the scientific type of person. So being able to take like different, points of information and bring it together into one like cohesive way forward. I want to say kind of making sense of chaos into a good path forward would be my superpower.
pattern weaver. I love that.
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
you have got to be the first person that's a pattern weaver out of the 200 plus episodes
I
who's
tried to,
articulated it. And it's a cool
yeah.
way to look at it because that is so needed in so many ways when we approach things in life. So good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you. I tried to bring something fresh.
It is fresh. I
Yeah.
love it. And thinking about, you know, maybe think a little bit about high school or university as well, whatever works for you. But whatever was your favorite subjects in school?
I want to say, back in high school, it was definitely gym class. That was that was a fun one. I didn't get to take it as much because when you're on like the university stream, right, you only get to take it once or twice. But outside of that, it was science. So I was always interested in science class, did, relatively well in it. And then from there, in the like Ontario curriculum, when it branches off to just science into like chemistry, physics, biology, that kind of thing, I took computer science when I got the chance, and that turned out to be my favorite class. So we were just learning about, basic Java, but I
Okay.
really enjoyed that class, getting my first taste of programming and, picking it up relatively well. So that was my favorite class.
Awesome, awesome. And we all start somewhere with a job. And I know some people are like, do you want me to share the first job I was paid or the first job? I'm just like, whatever first job you did, like whether it's
Yeah.
what was your first job?
My first job was timekeeping. So that's
Ah,
running the like clock for hockey games
yep.
at my local arena. So I did that summer going into grade 9. I got connected through like a through volunteering I was doing. So I ended up, getting that opportunity. I was looking to, start working. So it was fun, going to the hockey
That's
rink early in
cool.
the morning, watching, minor league hockey.
Yeah. No, that's a
Yeah.
super cool job. I
Yeah.
think that's one of my first timekeepers too. I know we've had a few
Yeah.
referees or whatever, but um, if you had to describe yourself in one word, what would you pick?
One word I'd have to say go-getter. And
Yeah,
this again came from when I was reaching out about the superpower. Someone
yeah,
just gave me that one, so I'm gonna repurpose that and say
that's a good
go-getter.
one. That's a good one. Don't lose that. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that on you. That's an awesome way to describe yourself, awesome way to
Thank you.
live life. So,
Yeah.
let's talk about going back a bit from the beginning. Many of the listeners here are making those transitions, trying to figure out where they go to school, or maybe wrapping up school and figuring out what's next. But can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about your transition from high school to university and why you decided to pursue computer science and eventually applied computing as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I want to say I had like a clear indication of going to university from an early age, which, is a good thing because I think that's just a major decision that people struggle with in general is do I want to go to university or not, or do I want to go to college or, jump right into the working world? But I knew I was going to university pretty early on. So my mom got a job at the university through like the School of Medicine. So me and my sister, we knew that we were going there, and it was always part of the conversation growing up. So at least I had that aspect covered, that I knew where I was going, so then I just had to pick, okay, what do I want to do? Really. When I was younger, it started off with anesthesiology, and then as I, kind of
Ah,
grew up, got to high school, I realized how much like school that would be. And
yeah.
it was a little bit of a deterrent. And then again, when I'm talking about how, the classes branched off from science to, the different disciplines, when I took that computer science class, that kind of locked it in at that point that I was like, oh, okay, I really enjoy this. I really want to pursue this. So that's a little bit about how I, came up with the university and computer
Gotcha.
science. But it wasn't all like that easy. So when I had to, finally go through with applications and all that, I ended up having to retake advanced functions in grade 12. So I had to do like a course over the summer and get that grade up so then I could finally make it into the program. So, it's you can have your ideas set, but it's not always like smooth sailing, right?
Yep, absolutely. And thinking about someone who might be listening to this podcast, I know sometimes I get the question like, what if I pick the wrong university or the wrong program? What or feeling overwhelmed? What advice would you give to high school students looking to pursue their post-secondary?
Um, my advice for high school students pursuing post-secondary is really, like I said, that's a question that just off the bat so many people struggle with is what do I even do, right? Where do I go? I
Hmm.
think it takes a lot of reflection, honestly,
Very good
is
point.
like it's hard at that point in life, but I think you really have to, choose or sit down and reflect about what really makes you happy and like what your goals are. Because I think that's the main point. You got to spend your time doing something that you enjoy. And maybe it's a trade-off. Maybe like, oh, I really love traveling the world, but you can't really make a job out of that. So maybe making a job that lets you, travel the world, looking at the best
Yeah,
payoff. So I would say really it takes reflection about what your ambitions are, what your goals are, and what you really want to like spend your time doing, which can be hard. Like it's hard to sit down and really flesh that out. But
I
yeah,
think
that's
it's
that's
so
what I would say
important.
the
Yeah.
advice is.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. It's so important to reflect on that and to think about it and spend some time looking into it, right?
Yeah,
it is a pretty big decision. You should be deciding that based
yeah,
on some things, right?
yeah.
I want to talk about university entrepreneurship, and I know you founded Genie Digital Solutions while still being a student. That's so cool, like to do that. And I'm
Thank you.
curious, like, how did you create your business? How did you prepare for it? Just especially for those entrepreneurial spirited folks that are listening in.
hmm
Maybe you can share a little
Um,
bit into sites into that.
yeah. So I don't want to say there's like a lightning in the bottle moment. I just
Yeah.
think I was like, I was interested in pursuing that avenue when I was going through university and, getting ready to go. And I always thought, my end goal is, oh, I want to be like a CEO or a CTO or have my own business. But the conversation kind of ended there, right? It was like, I want to do this, but okay, how do I do it? Like, what's the steps? And at first I just thought I got to get a job and I have to spend a couple decades in the working world and then eventually I'll get there, which might be, a fair way to do it. But as I progressed through university, it was really, I want to say it changed a lot when I got into the Mac program. After that, I think it built like a level of confidence and competency within
Hmm.
myself and in my technical ability. So at that point, I was confident that, I know I can deliver websites. I know how to work in groups. I know how to deliver like software, right? Meet these requirements. So I want to say that was the main proponent that
Hmm.
like continued the idea. And it took a long time. I didn't just, open it up one day, I'm gonna make, websites or software or something. I was sitting on the idea for a long time and, kind of trying to piece it together. And then eventually, just the right opportunity kind of fell into my lap. I was able to connect with someone who was looking for like some custom web development, and from there, I just, took it on and kept rolling ever since.
Good for you. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
And did you ever doubt yourself in that process or was it
Um, doubt myself in terms of what? Like doubt myself being able to do it or
well, I entrepreneurship is a pretty big thing to jump into, like your own business, creating all that. There's a lot of different aspects I found doing my own thing this past year that I never even thought I'd be doing. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just wondered if there's any moments where you're like, should I do this? Should I not? Or where you just kind of all in, let's go for it, try it.
I think once I really sat with the idea for a long time, then I fleshed it out. I want to say, I have again that aspect of confidence in yourself really
Yeah,
helps to be able to know. So I'm the type of person that, I'm driven. If this is my goal, then I'm going to go after it.
good
And
for you.
um, I think doubt is reasonable. And I always try to also still stay accountable. That's like a core principle I
That's
try
good.
and live by is
Yeah,
stay accountable. So stay accountable to your actions, your deliverables and like your outcomes. And embracing the opportunity to learn as well. I think just having that kind of mindset going into it took
good.
away like a lot of the fear of it not working out, as opposed to, oh, it might not work out and I might, fail everything, looking at it from it might not work out, but I might be able to learn and do better next time, I think. So, there's moments where it was difficult or it felt like a lot, but just staying persistent and, continuing to work through it, I want to say is what really got me through like kind of those thoughts or feelings.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's a good way. And it's especially good to because everything's a learning, everything's a journey. It's not about the destination. So no, that's
Yeah.
really cool. So another thing that captured my attention is you've worked while you've gone to school, you worked at LCBO, web projects at university. How did you balance academics, work, side hustles, and kind of figure that all out? Like time management must
Yeah.
have been huge. I mean, or is huge.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, trying to, do some research and some preparation. It's not glamorous, but it really just comes down to that. It really just comes down to time management. And I'm not saying I'm an expert at time management by any means, but taking simple steps like having a calendar or like using some kind of calendar and actually planning your time and planning your days, I think is the biggest thing.
Yep.
I worked throughout high school, had, various jobs. I worked throughout university, aside from COVID. Um, so I'm used to it and I understand that, the feeling of having to work and, go to school at the same time. And yeah, I think it really comes back to time management and knowing if you're trying to achieve something or get towards your goals, then always kind of being cognizant of that. If I have to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then I know I gotta do my labs during the week because I'm not gonna be able to do them on the weekend. Especially, you know, school and work can be enough, but if you throw then again side projects or passion projects into the mix, that's when it gets like even tougher because okay,
Yeah.
now I need to like take a scalpel and budget out some time so I can also do this. So I think it really comes down to, again, like I said, your goals, your ambitions, and making the time for what you want to do. Again, having a calendar is huge. If anyone
Yeah.
doesn't use some kind of t time management, that's very important. So
And I
that's
also
what
heard
I'm going
you
to
need
bring
a
it down to.
scalpel as well. A scalpel.
Yeah, well,
Good
when
tool.
it gets really busy, if you find your calendar's full, then at some point you're like, I can't just budget the time anymore. Now you got to prioritize. Now I got to,
Yeah.
okay, maybe, cut this out because I want to make time for this.
Yeah. No,
But
perfect. You're right. How about networking? I know, networking is always a, big buzzword, but it actually does have a lot of impact, as you know.
mhm.
Whether that's through professors, mentors, people you meet at events, like the event we just did together. Um, what are some of your tips and tricks around networking that you want to share, or what has worked for you?
Um, Tips and tricks around networking. I think, like you said, it's very important. I think, your network is your net worth and all that kind of stuff. I've been involved with networking, down here in Windsor, where I'm from, for some time now. And it's something that takes, consistent effort. It's not just like showing up to one event and then hoping to get an internship from it. You got to go there and plant the seeds and build the community. And the real value is in the follow-up conversations.
Mm,
So when you go there and you meet somebody, being able to not just like throwing a contact card at them, but actually following up and having another conversation where you get to kind of learn more about each other. And it can be daunting and I can respect that. I remember the feeling of going to my first networking event and just, kind of showing up cold turkey and not really knowing what to walk into.
yeah.
But it takes some of that, uncomfortable or maybe like awkward conversation before you finally get the swing of it. But the main point is like everyone's there to do the same thing. Everyone's there to try and network and try and meet each other. So when you approach it from that angle, it takes a little bit of the pressure off. And maybe see it as like a game as well. Like you're there to, I want to meet five people today, or I
Yep.
want to exchange information with five people, get five follow-ups, something
Yeah, have
like
a
that. It
goal
helps
set.
kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
going into it with the goal, it helps kind of give you some guidance and, some reassurance about what to do. So
Yeah, I like
I'd say
that.
that's like my tips.
And I think you're right too. It's not just about the event itself, but it's the follow-up. And especially if you approach that goal or that networking event with truly, sincerity about, getting to know people and things like that. That's where you find those common grounds, which lead to the other conversations. Like, oh, I didn't know you went to blah, 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 or I didn't know you were interested in
Yeah.
hockey, or I didn't know, right? Like those are the things that branch out to other conversations beyond just jobs.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a note I had written down as well, is that approaching it with that kind of, accepting that, it might be difficult or you might be a little worried to talk to someone you don't know. Approaching it with that, sincerity, being authentic and genuine is what will really, make you connect with people, I believe.
Absolutely. And I
So,
know you've achieved certificates in SQL, Bash scripting, and is it Hadoop? Is that how you say it?
yeah, it's Hadoop, yeah.
Hadoop? Okay. Um, obviously continuous learning is so important, and especially in tech, how do you stay on top of it all? And what do you decide to look at next?
Um, yeah, continuous learning is very important. I think it's almost not, I don't want to say like a buzzword, but you hear about it a lot these days. You
Yeah,
always need to be learning, always need to be continuously improving. And I totally agree. I think if you stop learning, you stop progressing, it kind of like it kills your momentum in a way, kind of makes you stagnate. And I mean, as it relates to tech, and my lane, you have to really stay ahead and you got to be able to stay competitive. If you're still using technology that's, old and outdated, for example, if you just try to, get a job maybe with HTML and CSS and you want to be a web designer, it's going to be challenging. You got to know the modern frameworks, you got to know the modern tools. So I want to say, yeah, staying on top of it is really important. And outside of like a kind of a job and se job security point of view, staying on top for innovation. I
hmm
think as maybe a student or someone who doesn't have a ton of resources, it can be hard to compete in the tech space, like with established companies that have a lot of resources. But if you're, purposeful about learning and staying on top of the latest technology, there's opportunity definitely and room for someone to, innovate as just, someone with limited resources. So I think that's another reason why it's important in the lane of, being able to innovate and try and make something that way.
Yeah, super, super important. Great advice. Thank you on that. And then I wanted to ask you, I know like seeing you present at the last event and sharing your tricks and your skills, I should say, really. What excites you most about the future of tech?
That's a good question. I think it kind of relates to that last question, but how much
Yeah,
opportunity there is right now. Like how much space for innovation, especially on the AI side of things. I think there's so much like opportunity there to actually become, you know, something to actually establish yourself.
right.
And
Yeah.
these tools are being adopted so quickly now. I mean, me and you, we both saw the keynote about how fast tools like ChatGPT are being adopted, right? So the how fast they're being integrated is really exciting. So if you make something, you might, be on to the next tool that just becomes part of people's daily life. Um, so I want to say that's really exciting for me, seeing where, especially again, tech related, where like AI ecosystems will be
Yeah.
further than just, one single product, but you can look at it at different scales, but 10, 20, 30 years from now, what kind of tools are going to be available at that point that might be being developed today? Or maybe tools today that are going to be, part of making something truly incredible. I think 30 years from now we'll have just like stuff we can't really imagine at this point, and to me
Yeah.
that's really exciting how much space there is for new technology.
And to advance and grow in that space is really pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How about mentors? Do you have mentors in your life that help you think through things or maybe people
Yeah.
you go to for advice?
So I think, growing up, I never really established like a clear mentorship role with people. you kind of look up to people and you think, oh, maybe like this guy's cool or this guy's really smart, and you want to try and emulate that in some way. But I'd never really taken the step to look for mentorship. And again, that's another thing I feel like it's part of like public discourse now about, looking for mentors and having people that can guide you. And it's really important, I think, being able to have people that you trust and respect and want to emulate in some way that you can learn from. So when I think back, one of the first mentors I had, I'm going to go through a couple. Again, we never properly established that mentorship relationship where, ask him the question, right? But he was a kind of volunteer lead for Society St. Vincent de Paul. Again, that's how I got introduced to the timekeeping job. But he
Gotcha.
was sort of helping the kind of like delivery team lead there. So Society St. Vincent de Paul, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they provide like food and non-perishables and like groceries to people in need, like in
Okay.
communities, right? So they do that in Windsor. And he has this guy, his name is Darcy. He's a really big dude, just like a big tall dude, but he had such humility towards people. And just the way that he approached and showed respect and like care and sincerity towards everybody was really like inspiring, truly. Like I'm not a super religious person myself, but really stuck to like his beliefs and he applied it in I think the best possible way, showing this like regard to everyone. So I
Hmm.
want to say he was a mentor and a light. I was like I want to, emulate that. I want to try and, be like that myself. So he stuck out to me when I was going through. Other than that, I want to say Justin T. Win. He is someone in the Windsor area. He has his own business, Meta Excellence, and I can't remember exactly how I met him, but he is a alumni of the same fraternity that I'm in, and so
Okay.
we mixed at some point. But he's someone again, he really, lives a values-based life and I would see him at networking events and we got to talking and he's someone that I've established that clear mentorship relationship with where we meet regularly and most of the time it's about, discussing things like values-based leadership and,
Yeah.
giving me coaching on my own business. And it's really important to be able to, have those conversations and get that insight from someone qualified, right? And that you respect and again want to emulate or learn from.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for some shout outs there too to them because
Yeah,
as you combine your values, your skills, and your passions, and those all collide, especially in the workplace, it's incredible what can happen, right?
yeah,
If you're feeling good about, your values are not in conflict, your values are, you see that, you want to emulate that or whatever. I mean, that's some great ideas there and mentors that have obviously impacted you and just hearing you talk about them, yeah, I can see the smile on your face
yeah,
and, it's
yeah. Well, I was
impactful to have
excited.
people.
Yeah, I was excited for the opportunity to shout them out again as well, and
Yeah,
be able to
absolutely.
give them some light for the work that they help or the knowledge that they help pass down to me. So
100%. And sometimes people don't realize what they say or do, even in those moments, how you remember those and how that was impactful. And that's sometimes the beauty of it all too.
yeah.
Um, if you had to think about advice to your younger self, maybe high school or your first year at university, what would you tell yourself?
Again, this was like a question that I had to sit on because there's so much
I know.
there. I mean, I think the first one I'd tell him to buy Bitcoin. That'd be first and foremost. Um, but other than that, I would say, continue to put family first. I think that's very important. You gotta, you know, they're always gonna be there for you, so always to continue to be there for them. Um, and then not to fear the hard paths in life. Don't shy away
Mm,
from taking on, something daunting and to not be in such a rush. I think it is definitely another important thing and that I would tell myself is don't be in such a rush to, you know, get on
yeah,
with life.
that's
So I'd
right.
say
Enjoy
that.
it along the way, right?
But then tailored more towards university students, I would tell my first year self, I mean, my first year it started during COVID, so it was a different university experience. I didn't really get on campus until like second year. So it was, a unique experience, but I would say just get involved. Get involved as much as possible. Not like pursue every opportunity, meet everybody. I think again, for other people that are starting university or going through it, is just get involved as much as possible, undertake as much as you can, meet everyone you possibly can, and like go all in on getting the most out of the experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I can't believe we're at the end of this podcast already. It's been an amazing time chatting with you and
Thank you.
connecting and thank you for sharing so many of your insights and your thoughts with the listeners. It's been a real pleasure to have you on, and I hope you had a good time with it too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was really fun. It was great to get the platform and the opportunity. And I want to just give you some thanks as well for being such a Gen Z champion. I don't know if you saw my last LinkedIn post. I
I did.
reiterated it there. But yeah, it means a lot to have, someone like you who really shows support and belief in us. So I
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much. That means a lot. And
Yeah,
I saw you share that in the room with me and then there and now again. So
yeah,
I know, thank you. Encourages me to continue to be who I am as well. So thank you
definitely.
for that. And for our listeners, especially students, early career professionals, all those exploring what's next, Brendan's journey shows that embracing curiosity, leveraging your network, and taking action are all key to building a meaningful path forward. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find us at Convery, coffeewithconvery.com or on your favorite podcast channel. You can also find us on Instagram where we share upcoming and recent posts of our stories, behind the scenes, and updates. Until next time, remember that success isn't always about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym. Thank you so much.